If you've ever tried to train your own dog and have gotten extremely frustrated, you probably jump straight to verbal cues like sit and down and come. But the funny part is in dog training, it is extremely important that we learn how to develop what are called nonverbal cues. So in this upcoming video, we're gonna teach you guys how to develop the first type of nonverbal cue, which are called visual cues. So my name is Brent and this is Penny. She's a 5-month-old golden retriever puppy. Today we're gonna be going over how we develop visual cues and kind of different variation that's gonna be important for you guys to master. The way that we develop visual cues is really simple. Okay, we associate our movement patterns to some type of reward or destination. So typically when I work my dogs at home, if I can use their already existing meals for training, that's probably gonna be the easiest on their stomachs, and it's also gonna be the easiest on our budget. We're gonna go over basic obedience visual cues. When developing visual cues, we're gonna have food in our hand. That food in our hand is gonna serve as a luring or a target point. So if I grab my dog's food and I put it in a fist like this, and I walk backwards, notice how she follows that hand because she knows that there's kibble in there. If I do this over and over with food in my hand, my dog will be drawn to my hand almost like a magnet. This becomes the movement pattern for come. Now let's break down a couple of the things that I'm doing. My hand is low, but also what I'm doing is I'm backpedaling. So eventually, whether I have food in my hand or not, if I back up, my dog starts following me. If I bring this hand down and I walk backwards, my dog is following me. If I raise my hand up, now we're introducing the sit position. Okay? Now the reason that dogs sit when we raise our hands up is because it raises their focal point up, it bends the spine in their neck here, and no one likes having a bent spine, so they have a tendency of dropping their tush down to feel more comfortable. So if I practice this for so many weeks, eventually my dog assumes I have food in my hand very often. So I can actually start phasing food out of my hand very easily. So let's do it one more time. I don't have any food in my hand. I bring the food down. I'm able to manipulate my dog's behavior, pop them into a sit. My dog did all of that with no food in my hand, but still she did a good job. So she deserves to get rewarded. So I'll pop food right into her mouth. Over time, we're gonna start getting our dogs to follow a hand with no food in it. So little by little, we'll start phasing food from being in our hand. So that way our dogs aren't relying on the smell of cookies and treats in our palm. So next skill, we're gonna take that food in our hand or that hand signal, we're gonna create a focal point, we're gonna pop our dogs into a sit position, I drop it right below my knee, and this makes our dogs go into a down position. This downward signal becomes the visual cue for going into a flat down position. It's not helpful as a dog owner if I need to touch the floor every time I want the dog to lay down. They already know how to go down. If I just lower my fist in a downward motion, as soon as they lay flat, I'll open my palm, they can eat the food. You also don't wanna do a pirouette to the floor. You also don't wanna take a knee to the floor. What I want you to do is from a standing position, you're just gonna drop your hinge at the hip a little and go by your knee. When your dog lays flat, good dog, they get fed. The next thing we're gonna do is go over how to get our dogs to follow at either of our sides. Now, typically in dog training, we teach our dogs to come to our left side. This is an old tradition that we still do today. So when I'm developing visual cues, it's important that I put my food in my left hand for this cue. Now what we're trying to do is we're trying to get our dogs to spin around and face the direction that we're facing. We're gonna go over 2 variations of getting this done. You guys pick the version that's easiest for you and your dog. I'm gonna grab my food, and the signal is me bringing it down to her face and me spinning her around so she's facing the same way that I'm facing. Now sometimes people don't have really good range of motion, so it's important, you might need to step back with one foot, spin the dog around, and then step back forward. Now this could be a little bit of a hard step if you're not that coordinated. We're happy to teach this to you in person next time we see you at the facility. Now the second version is ideal for dogs who are highly food-driven, food-motivated. If I grab a handful of food or a fistful of food, I'm gonna face my palm away from my dog's head. Now what this forces my dog to do is to kind of sneak around my hand to try and discover the food that's in my hand. So I turn it away, put it here, and I can rotate my wrist outward to get her to spin around. So this visual cue is intended to just get our dogs to our side, and in real time, it just looks like this. Like that. Typically, when getting the dog in a heel position, what we're gonna start doing is walking in whatever direction we wanna walk. Now, to teach our dogs to like following us, it's really important to keep that food at your side and hold that food hostage until you're ready to give it to your dog. Food is here, we do that special move, and it's important that I keep my dog's head behind my feet. So my dog is not way up here where I'm walking. My dog is actually right behind my feet when I'm walking, so you can't really see her from that angle. She's right here behind my feet. Now, typically, when I'm doing following at my side, I like to finish it with a stationary position. It could be a sit or it could be a down position. So the next thing we're gonna go over is visual cues for getting our dogs to stay in a position. Anytime my dog comes towards me, the way that I get them to back up is by stepping into them, okay? So that stepping into them, in essence, is a cue to back up or to go back. So sometimes I will leave my dog in a position, I will back up, my dog will make a mistake, and I have to physically step into them to back them up. We can use our basic hand signal. Our hand signal for stay is gonna be the signal stop. So if I were to walk around with my dog and not say anything, if I were to just go, she should know that that means to stay where I left her. So if I want my dog to back up or go back to a spot and they're in front of me, I can step into them. If I want my dogs to stay in a position, I'm just gonna show them the stop signal with my hand. Another visual signal that we've taught your dog is gonna be the signal to send them to a location. So the signal is really simple. I'm gonna point towards a spot or a cot that I'd like your dog to be on. So if I want her to get off, I'm gonna kind of guide her off with my gesture. Now here's one bonus tip that I'm gonna give you that's gonna help teach you how to get your dogs to stay in positions. Anytime I'm asking my dog to do a task, if I feed them multiple times throughout that task, my dog's desire to develop endurance is gonna grow the more that I practice. So I'm gonna demonstrate a concept called stabilizing. Now, stabilizing is when we reinforce our dogs for holding positions or commands. The very, very first one that I'm gonna show you guys how to stabilize is gonna be a sit position. Now, when stabilizing the sit position, I'm gonna first ask my dog to sit. Number one expectation is that my dog should not get up from this 2 to 3 seconds later. So if my dog holds this position for about 5 seconds, she's technically being a good girl. So I can say the word good, and I can feed her in position. Now, I don't want you guys to feed her out of position because that forces her to break the command or the concept. So always make sure if the dog is doing something that you want them to maintain, bring the food to them and feed them in the position that you ask them to be in. What we're working on is we're working on stabilizing duration. I want to teach my dog the longer you stay in this position, the more opportunities you might get food. Once we've worked on duration, now we can start adding distance. So distance would mean me walking backwards, me walking forwards, and if she held that position without breaking, I can go ahead and give her food in position. Again, if I walk backwards and I hold it for 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and she doesn't move, I can now come back to her and feed her in position. Now, when we start adding distance to the equation, we can start adding some variable distances, which means I might be able to drop my leash. Maybe I go and I touch this couch over here, and as long as my dog held the position, I can go ahead and feed her in position. So eventually this has to come to an end. So maybe I'll walk far away and I'll say, Penny, okay. And that's her release command to be out of that position. Commands by themselves are technically just tricks that we teach our dogs to do. However, when they have endurance and stability, now they actually become useful commands we can use in the real world. So I hope you guys learned something about visual cues. Now, one thing I like to say is that good dog training is actually relatively pretty quiet. So if you guys saw this video and are inspired to teach your dog visual cues, please leave a comment below. We'd love to see how your progress is going. Now, there are other forms of information we teach our dogs, like tactile cues and verbal cues. So make sure you watch those videos so you have a complete understanding of how we can communicate with dogs. My name is Brent with CANIS Behavior, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.